Well, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point Podcast. Everybody's doing great on this miserable Thursday. After a great month of August, we started off September with some heavy rains today, but you know what? The weather has been great. I can take a day of rain. Letting the To The Point mascot out Dirk to pee will be less fun today. But you know what? That's the price you pay when you have a dog, I suppose. But lots to dive into today. The NFL is officially 1 week away from starting the regular season opener, where the Dallas Cowboys will head to Tampa Bay to face the reigning defending Super Bowl champions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And there's a lot of stories in the NFL. Today, we're going to talk about U.S. Open tennis. It's day 4. So far, it's been a really great tournament for Canadians. We'll also talk about a big storyline involving one of the best tennis players in the world on the men's side. That would be Stefanos Tsitsipas, and kind of some of the number 2 type antics that he's getting into down in Flushing Meadows. We'll also touch on the NHL. A lot of signings come in over the last 48 hours. Joel Farabee re-signing with the Philadelphia Flyers today. We got Colton Parayko re-signing in St. Louis. And we'll also, we got the Tour Championship started today. Some guys have really shot up the leaderboard with a good start. We'll touch on the format, what I think about that. And then baseball, there's so much going on. I often struggle to get to baseball within the hour. I will try to do that better as we progress here. Baseball, today's the 2nd, so there's actually 1 month away from the season being over. Interestingly enough, last night with the Dodgers win over the Braves and the Giants losing their 3rd straight to the Milwaukee Brewers, the Los Angeles Dodgers have passed the San Francisco Giants and are now in first place in National League West. San Francisco has held that first place for seems like 3 months, where the Dodgers were always 4 to 5 games behind them. But the Dodgers have Mookie Betts back. Cody Bellinger can finally hit something, and they seem to be finding a groove. But more interesting, this weekend, we're going to see a 3-game set between the Dodgers and Giants. And that really, I think this weekend will decide that division, who will win it. It'll have a huge effect on it for sure. 3-game set. It'll be on Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN Sunday night. So big stage for them. We're also heading into a long weekend where we have golf, we'll have tennis, college football. So lots to dive into today. But I thought I'd start off with really the story of the week. Obviously, Tuesday was NFL cut day, where you have to, by 4 Eastern on Tuesday, you had to cut your roster to 52 players. And, we saw a lot of guys get cut around the league. Bashad Breeman, a longtime wide receiver, got cut by the Lions. A lot of notable players. Josh Rosen, surprisingly enough, made the roster in Atlanta after being cut by San Francisco in their first line of cuts earlier. We saw Brian Hoyer get cut by the Patriots. He will be later re-signed. He'll be re-signed later in the week. But the big cut that it shocked me was the New England Patriots cutting Cam Newton. And I've had text conversations. I've talked about it on the podcast several times, how I thought, I can't see Bill Belichick going with a rookie to start the season. It's not Bill. He had Tom Brady. It's a different scenario where Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick, but he could have went with the rookie. He stuck with Drew Bledsoe. But after a period of time where Drew Bledsoe went down, Tom Brady came in and had success. He went to Tom, and after that 2001 season, he never looked back, and the rest is Super Bowl history. But here, he has Cam Newton. Cam Newton is not what he once was, but he still has pedigree in the league. Cam Newton was a 2015 NFL MVP. He led the Carolina Panthers to a 15-1 record, including 35 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, losing in the Super Bowl to the Denver Broncos. But with that defense, Tom Brady lost to those same Broncos earlier in the playoffs. So that just tells you what kind of buzzsaw that Von Miller and the boys down there were putting, DeMarcus Ware were putting on Cam Newton. And Cam has had his fair share of injuries. He's had his foot problems. He's had shoulder surgery. But you look at his season last year. He had one of the worst skill position rosters in the NFL. His best receiver was a former quarterback turned receiver, Jacoby Myers. Not even the quarterback turned receiver, Julian Edelman, because he was done. He was washed. He's injured. And he just got old. He's a receiver. He's had a great career. You could argue Hall of Fame. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but nevertheless, that's another story for another day. But he had no tight ends to brag about. His running game was less than adequate. And somehow not to mention on the defensive side of the ball, he didn't have Dante Hightower, who could have won Super Bowl MVP in the Atlanta comeback, even though they gave it to Brady. He didn't have Patrick Chung. He didn't have Matthew Slater on special teams. So this just illustrates he was missing a lot of key cogs in the machine. And I thought he didn't get a fair shake last season. We don't really know what Cam Newton can bring to the table because he wasn't given adequate weapons. He wasn't given an adequate roster to really say, okay, this is what Cam Newton is as a quarterback at this point of his career. But nevertheless, they go into the draft. We see quarterbacks go number 1. Then we see Trey Lance go number 3. And then we see Justin Fields go 10, and it starts a spiral. And finally, New England's got the 15th pick. And they're sitting there. And they didn't have to trade anything like the 49ers did, like the Bears did. They could just sit there and take the player they wanted. And Mac Jones was sitting there. And to be fair, Mac Jones is the Tom Brady prototype. I'm not saying Mac Jones is going to have the career of Tom Brady. That would be just plain stupid because nobody knew Tom Brady was Tom Brady. He was a 6th-round pick. Bill Belichick can't even take that much credit for drafting Tom Brady because if you thought a guy was that good, you're not letting him sit there until the 6th round. But Mac Jones has the Tom Brady attributes. He's not the fittest quarterback. If you remember the picture of Tom Brady at draft day, he had a little belly on him. He looked like the most unathletic quarterback of all time. Well, Mac Jones can run better than Tom Brady, but he's got a little belly too. He's not athletic, doesn't have the biggest arm in the world, but he can run an offense. And what Mac has that Tom Brady has in spades, almost probably better than anybody for just a prototypical pocket passer, is his feet. Tom is great, not because of his mobility, but his ability to avoid sacks, whether it's moving up in the pocket, stepping back, using his side-to-side quickness to get away from people. He just has a knack for doing it. And Mac has that same attribute. And we saw that at Alabama, where he rarely ran the ball, but he would avoid sacks by just pivoting his feet, doing little things to avoid the rush. And in the preseason, he was exposed a little bit. He got sacked 4 times in their preseason finale against the New York Giants, which can happen in the regular season because the New England Patriots have a good offensive line, opposed to you look at Trevor Lawrence's situation in Jacksonville, or Zach Wilson's got one of the best tackles in football, Mekhi Becton, but Justin Fields in Chicago, that's a disaster. There's a reason he's not playing. So Mac has better protection than these other quarterbacks. But I still, in the back of my mind, I said, there's no way Bill will start a rookie. But to my chagrin and to my surprise, he cuts Cam Newton. Doesn't even keep Cam on the roster as a backup quarterback. And a few things come to my mind right away. Number 1, Cam Newton is not vaccinated. Cam Newton had COVID last year. He missed 2 games. Now, I'm not going to get on the issue of vaccine or no vaccine. That's for another podcast. Joe Rogan can talk about that while he's in quarantine. But it's freedom of choice. But the NFL has clearly made it clear. We want players to get vaccinated. The Carolina Panthers cut players so they could get to the 100% vaccination rate. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers today became the 2nd team to be completely vaccinated. I know Tom Brady was one of the last players on that roster to get vaccinated. So clearly, Bruce Arians has said, we're doing it as a team. It's a team atmosphere. We want to win another Super Bowl. And who is more of a team coach than Bill Belichick? Forever, Tom Brady was just another guy, one of 52. And whether that was true or not, it doesn't matter. That's the way it ran there. Me, you, and a guy across the street can say, well, Tom Brady is Tom Brady and Joe Montana. You can have that debate. Bill Belichick does not care. And clear to me, he can say no. And I heard his press conference where he literally just said no when he had his press conference saying it had nothing to do with him being cut. To me, it did. Because if it's a race through camp, I would rather have Cam Newton as my backup quarterback than Brian Hoyer. Just point blank. You can start Mac Jones. But if Mac gets hurt, if something happens, I would rather have Cam Newton sitting there in the weeds waiting than Brian Hoyer. Because if Mac Jones tears his ACL week 1, which, knock on wood, I don't want to see any players get injured, but it's the NFL. We know players are going to get injured. It's a collision sport. So I look at it and say, Brian Hoyer is a career backup. Was a great backup to Tom Brady. Good in the room, good team guy, whatever. All those stupid, forgetting the word right now. But you know what I mean? Just the characteristics, the traits that, these really good people have, where they might not be the best players, but they're there and they're just good people. But Brian Hoyer, we've seen him as a starting quarterback in this league. It didn't go well. Cleveland didn't last the season. Was there in Houston, was a bust. He's just a backup quarterback, and there's nothing wrong with that. But Cam Newton gives you a better chance to win football games today than Brian Hoyer. So Brian Hoyer is vaccinated. Jared Stidham, who's going to be the third quarterback on the roster, is vaccinated. So it doesn't take, you don't need to be a rocket scientist. I look at this and say, clearly getting your COVID-19 vaccination had something to do here. And I think it has a lot to do across the league. Urban Meyer made it clear when they made cuts and it was a two-horse race between two guys and it was a dead heat. If one guy was vaccinated, one guy wasn't, they took the vaccinated guy because this season's different. Last year, nobody was vaccinated because we didn't have access to it in the NFL. And they had to reschedule games and it was chaotic. We even had a Wednesday afternoon game and it was unprecedented. That's not happening this year. If a non-vaccinated player gets COVID and it's spread across the entire locker room, guess what? That team is forfeiting a game and that team will not get their game checks. So not only do teams want to win, of course you want to win the Super Bowl, but if I'm running the Houston Texans and I know I'm going to stink this season, there's no way in hell I'm missing out on a game check, especially if I'm a veteran and I got to sit through this all year where I know we're not going to win anything. I need to get paid. It's what we do anything in life. You can love your job as much as you want, but you're still looking at your bank account at the end of the day saying, go, check cleared. And so for Cam Newton, number one, if I'm him, I go get vaccinated. Again, I'm just giving advice to him as a member. Then if I'm not telling anybody else to get vaccinated, I could give a shit. Just for me, we clearly see you got to read the room. And if you're in a room full of people with guns and you're there holding a sign saying no guns, you should probably maybe go away from that scenario, right? Maybe go to a different place. If I'm Cam Newton, I'm looking across the NFL. Teams have made it clear. We want you to get vaccinated. So I get it. It's your freedom of whatever, but I'd go get it. And he loves to be on social media. I'd say I put a picture of me getting vaccinated because then at least it shows that you did it, and teams might give you a call sooner than you think. Because otherwise, I think teams are going to be very hesitant to do it because you're going to bring in, and I agree, a better solution than what 95 teams have right now at the quarterback position when it comes to backup quarterbacks. But if you're backup in Dallas, like just speaking of Cam Newton's future, I think there's a couple different scenarios. Dallas jumped to my mind immediately because the Dallas Cowboys have Cooper Rush as their backup quarterback. Cooper Rush is about as moon mist as it gets. He just doesn't do anything. He's just there. He's a quarterback that can sit there and hold a clipboard, and he's great at it. But What Dak Prescott's coming off the season-ending ankle injury. He hasn't played a preseason snap. He hasn't played a snap in 330 days. Okay, yeah, he was durable his first 4 years, but we've seen quarterbacks where it takes one injury and then for the rest of your career, you're dinged. And if I'm the Cowboys, if it's Cooper Rush behind Dak Prescott, your season's over. Over. And you could argue that it'd be over with Cam because they had Andy Dalton, who was a good backup quarterback, and they missed the playoffs last year in the NFC least or East, if you're a fan of that division, but it's been pretty terrible for a long time now. But get vaccinated, go play backup for Dak Prescott, where who knows if you're going to get an opportunity, but I think Dak and Cam will get along. A couple of things. Cam loves the spotlight, being in Dallas, playing for America's team, whether that's truthful or not, that's what people in Texas think they are, America's team. Go play for America's team, be a good teammate, and maybe, the next season you get an opportunity to be a starter, or you at least get a better look after being, Andy Dalton was a backup quarterback last year, got an opportunity. Now he's a starter in Chicago. Might not be for long, but right now he's QB1 in Chicago. Who says Cam Newton can have that same opportunity next offseason? There's also the Houston Texans. Houston Texans are full of drama. Deshaun Watson's still on the roster. He's not going to be in court for his sexual misconduct allegations till after the season's over. So it's likely in the next week and change, he'll be put on the commissioner's exempt list where he's not eligible to play, but he will get paid. And, he'll just be sitting there. Houston can trade him if they wish. We've heard about the Miami Dolphins being interested. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are still going to inquire, potentially the Denver Broncos. I mean, half the league would trade their quarterback option right now for Deshaun Watson. If there is if the guy gets a criminal charge, that's a different story. The guy should go to jail and there's no debate there. But if he's got a perfect record and he's an outstanding citizen, this guy is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL every day of the week. So Cam, right now they have Tyrod Taylor. And Tyrod Taylor's a very good stopgap because he's Tyrod. He's a run first quarterback. He's dinking and dunking it. He does not have a big arm. Was a longtime backup in Baltimore. Then got an opportunity in Buffalo. And when they drafted Josh Allen, he was out of town. Then he wasn't backup in Cleveland. Started the season last year as the starter in LA before Justin Herbert took over. Now he's in Houston. Houston's got the worst roster in the NFL. It wouldn't surprise me if they won less than 3 games this year. They could go 1-16. That wouldn't surprise me. They are that bad. And Cam Newton would be a better option than Tyrod Taylor. But for Houston, they might not want to win any games because they're looking at their quarterback of the future, because Deshaun said before he does not want to play in Houston anymore. And I'm sure with all the allegations against him right now, Houston doesn't want him in their locker room. So he's very much tainted. So if they can get the first overall pick, draft Spencer Rattler, or another quarterback that emerges this year in college football, then that's what they'll likely do. But that's an option for me. There's Denver could be interesting because they have Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. But I think they like Teddy Bridgewater. They're comfortable with where they're at quarterback. So it's tough for Cam, but I feel for him. But this is what Bill Belichick does. He does what he thinks is best for the team. He's cold-blooded. I'm surprised. I'm surprised by the cut. I'm not surprised that he cuts a player of high status. Bill Belichick does not care what people think about what he does. And quite frankly, he shouldn't. I think it's a good way to run an organization because he's going to do what's best for the team. It's about the team. It's not about the outside people talking about it. And I do wish Cam all the best because I think he's had a tough go in his career where people have labeled him certain things that I think are completely unfair. The guy's a good football player, a good person by all accounts. And yeah, he likes to wear outfits that might be outside the box. And yes, he likes to be the center of attention, but there's nothing wrong with that either. That's called, just showcasing himself and trying to be unique. And I think people have a problem with that, where a quarterback's not just says something moon mist or vanilla, what people usually say. I think this is the big thing. I think more, and I'd love to get people's opinion on this. I think more people like the Sidney Crosby approach to handling the media than a guy that's really entertaining. They'd rather just, scoop up some really, really bad, like they'd rather go into a restaurant and have a really shitty meal. But you know what? They're at a really nice place. And, like you go to the Keg and you ask for a steak to be well done and you get it red and then you eat it. But you're like, you hate the meal. You're like, well, we're at the Keg and we got this nice bottle of wine. It's so good. But you look up and you're like, what did I get out of this? That's a Sidney Crosby. That's a Bill Belichick interview. You get nothing out of it. I don't mind some flair. I like a little cayenne pepper. I like my steak well done. And I'm sure a lot of people are angered by that. When I tell people I like my steak well done, it seems to piss off people. But I'd rather have somebody with flair than somebody that adds nothing, that brings nothing to the table. And Cam has always given me something. I'm in the content business. I have a podcast talking about hearing Tom Brady for 15 years with New England was like eating Jell-O. It's just nothing. It's gross. There's nothing appealing about it. Now I listen to Tom Brady in Tampa and I'm like, where the hell was this guy? He's got a personality. I actually care what he says. He's funny. He's not corny, gee whiz, Sidney Crosby. Oh, I'm from the Maritime. Boring. Like, I think more people like boring and they just eat it up and like, wow, that was an interesting interview. Okay. No, it wasn't. Like, and it's just, sometimes you just gotta enjoy when somebody tells you something authentic and genuine. Those are the best conversations. When you get talking to somebody about anything, it doesn't have to be about sports, but somebody tells you something about their life and they're open with you and they're not just, painting around the edges, so to speak. Those are pretty good conversations. You can get into deep topics. You can talk about life. And more often than not, with these bland, high-profile athletes, you get nothing. And that's why the NFL is great, because I think you see a lot of African Americans, let's just be honest, who are not afraid to do that because that's their nature. Where I think us white people, our white culture is just be bland, say what, just say what you have to say and get out of there. Well, that's not what I want to hear. That's why hockey players are so much less interesting than any other sport. You listen to most interviews of hockey players, they're not that intriguing. And half of it is this, when you're an interviewer, I could have a great interview, which I think I had a good one with Daryl Young a couple weeks ago. But Daryl had to be engaged and had to want to do the interview. I could ask great questions, but if he doesn't want to jump on and tell his stories and be interesting, then my interview falls flat. That's any interview. I've heard great questions asked to Bill Belichick, but he goes, no, on to Cincinnati. Yeah. Max the starter. We'll see what happens next week. Yeah, I don't know. And like, there's nothing to add there. So I that's long story short. I just wish Cam all the best, and I hope he's inspired the next generation of quarterbacks, of athletes in general, just to be open and to be a good player. I still think he can play in this league. The preseason did not tell me that Cam Newton can't play anymore, because he's better than a lot of backup situations in the NFL. But a couple things are against him. He's not vaccinated. And for quarterback, it's different than signing a contract at this time of year than a wide receiver or running back, because you have to learn their system. Now, you might run the same plays, but it's about the verbiage. It's about snaps and calls, and when you're going to get a blitz and running those type of things. So he's behind the 8 ball here. I don't suspect he'll be signed before week 1, meaning in the next week. But it might just be an injury happens and a team says, Cam, can you come in? That's where I see him going. But if I'm Dallas, it's a no-brainer to me. He's a better option than what I have right now. And Dallas always says it's Super Bowl or bust. Well, I'd rather have better protection with Dak the way he is. Cooper Rush is not the best option at quarterback. And I definitely think that Cam Newton would be a good fit in Dallas. Now, looking ahead to New England, now we'll get in this tomorrow doing our NFL season preview show. Matt Wright will join me tomorrow. We'll talk about every division's preview the season and everything in between. But New England is going to be a team that runs the ball a ton. Mac Jones is going to be like Tom Brady in 2001, where he's going to throw the football, but it's not going to be the big part of this team. He does have weapons. Kendrick Bourne is a good receiver playing in San Francisco. He's got new tight ends in Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. He's got Nelson Aguilar who can run down the field. He'll have N'Keal Harry when he returns. Jacoby Myers, still very good. We look at that running back depth. You got Damien Harris, who really emerged as an elite tailback the last few seasons. He should get a ton of carries. They have Rhamondre Stevenson, who's a 4th-round pick out of the University of Oklahoma. I think this guy can be a stud. He needs to get 8 to 10 carries a game, in my opinion. He might not be the best receiver out of the backfield, but he's a down-the-hill, in-your-face runner. He will run over linebackers. He's tough. He's physical. And I think he's a perfect guy to fit Bill Belichick, where Belichick had LeGarrette Blount for a number of years during the Tom Brady era. And Blount would just mow people over. He had over 1,000 yards rushing one season with Bill Belichick. I think Stevenson is more athletic than Blount, maybe not quite as physical, but they're in the same type of build where Stevenson is going to be a down-the-hill, in-your-face runner. And Blount was the same way, where he just tried to mow you over, get yardage, pick up first downs, and then see what happens. Stevenson has more breakaway speed, but he could be a silent assassin this year for the Patriots. They also have little J.J. Taylor and James White. James White's been a longtime Patriot where he's not going to run the ball a ton. He's a 3rd down back where he'll be available to Mac Jones on 3rd and 5s where you can throw it to a level sail where basically it's a tailback running a route out of the backfield where it's a 5-yard route. You throw it to him and then he scampers for a few yards. You get a first down. And I think James White will still be using that in that arena where he did that for Tom Brady for so long. He had over 100 yards receiving in the Atlanta Super Bowl as a running back. So I think James White still has a lot in the tank. They love him in New England. I think he'll have a big impact on this team. So I think Mac he'll throw the ball, but he's not going to be the emphasis. He's not going to be Tom Brady later in his New England years. It's going to be run the football, play good special teams, play good defense, and Mac Jones just don't make mistakes. Throw the ball, spread the ball around because they really don't have a bona fide number 1 receiver yet. I do think that'll be Jacoby Myers by the end of the season, but John, who's a good tight end, Hunter Henry, both were arguably number 1 tight ends in Baltimore and for the Chargers. But I think you can spread the ball around. Guys can have a lot of catches. One game, it might be Kendrick Bourne has 6 catches. And the next week, it might be Nelson Aguilar has 5 or 6. And you just spread the ball around like that. And they do have a lot of depth. So I think that's one thing New England can say this year that they didn't have last year. And with this roster, and if Mac Jones can play consistent football, they're going to push for the playoffs. Buffalo is clearly the favorite, winning the division last year, having a MVP front runner in Josh Allen and really good roster. Miami will be tough because they do have Tua Tagovailoa. They went 10-6 last year. We'll see how Tua can do. Second year in the league, a lot of pressure on him, but we'll see what he can do with this roster. And then the Jets have a rookie quarterback, but for New England, you got to win. Division games will be huge. Can you beat Miami and can you beat the Jets? Can you beat them 2 times each? They play the Jets twice in the first 7 weeks. I think they play Cincinnati in the first 7 weeks, New Orleans. So they got some easy opponents early. You want to get some of those wins before their schedule gets tougher down the stretch. And it'll be tough sledding for a rookie quarterback in his first year in the NFL. But Interesting couple of days in New England where normally they're quiet. There's not a lot of headlines, but we'll see where it goes. Mac Jones will open up a week from Sunday against the Miami Dolphins at home. But I'm sure the game everybody's looking forward to is week 4, where Tom Brady will return to Foxborough for the first time. And if everybody's healthy, it'll be Mac Jones, the heir apparent, against Tom Brady, the former, Patriots great. And that's on Sunday Night Football. Now, that's basically a Super Bowl ticket this season. Hard to come by, but that's the game of the year to watch for sure for these two teams. And, we'll talk about it more tomorrow. Matt Wright will be on tomorrow. We'll talk about that and all the rest of the divisions. But interesting across the NFL. We'll see what happens with Mac and in his rookie season and what the future holds for Cam Newton and his prospects in the NFL. This week also was the start of the U.S. Open tennis tournament, the final major of the season, where on the men's draw, really the focus is on Novak Djokovic. He's heading in looking for a career Grand Slam, winning in Australia, then winning in Roland Garros, winning Wimbledon. Now just one tournament away from getting the career slam. It would be the first time it's done since 1969. So looking to chase history. And he opened up against a young Danish player on Tuesday night, primetime, dropped the second set, but ended up winning in 4 pretty routinely. He did lose a set in his first round match at Wimbledon. So this is not completely uncommon to Djokovic, where he seems to start off tournaments slow and he gets better as it progresses. And he's looked good. Before I get into the Canadians, a match that was really fantastic on Monday was world number 3, Stefanos Tsitsipas, against former U.S. Open champion, a great of the sport, and Brit Andy Murray. Murray's had 2 hip surgeries. He's battled back. He got a wild card entry into the tournament. And, he hasn't played much tennis lately, but he did show a lot of fight in this match where he wins the first set. Tsitsipas comes back and wins the second. But after he wins the third set, he's got a lot of momentum. Tsitsipas takes a bathroom break. And he's gone over 9 minutes. And Murray's basically looking at his box saying, what the hell is going on? He starts talking to the chair ump saying, how long does it take to use, for somebody to use the bathroom? And okay, that's once, not a big deal. Tsitsipas wins the 4th set. And then after the 4th set, he takes another break. This one for just get a medical timeout where he has to go back and he doesn't stay on the court. He goes out back. It's another delayed. It's over 7 minutes. And Murray's just beyond frustrated at this point. Tsitsipas ends up winning the 5th set. So he comes from 2-1 down. He advances. And Murray was just irate. And he said after the match, I lost a ton of respect for Stefanos. This guy clearly is doing something illegal. How long does it take for somebody to drop a deuce, basically? And he was just irate. And earlier at the Rogers, this might have been Cincinnati earlier in the month, Sasha Zverev played against Tsitsipas. And Tsitsipas lost the first set and he went and took an extended break. And it was over 10 minutes long. And Zverev basically questioned Tsitsipas, saying that he was calling his coach and getting advice from him. And this is illegal, by the way. But Tsitsipas, it did show that the coach was on the phone. Now, he said he wasn't talking to Tsitsipas. They didn't really look into it. It's kind of a dead story. But this is not just a one-off where Tsitsipas is a great player. But it bothers me how he takes these breaks, because a guy has momentum. You want to get going right away, and he just slows it down. Now, you could say that's, like a game of chess, you're throwing your opponent off, but 10 minutes is too long. I'm sorry, unless it's a massive cramp and you really got to go. I don't believe half the time they're using the bathroom when they take these bathroom breaks, but you can't take this long. Either that or you have to have a chaperone with you. Because if he just goes back there by himself, who says he's not on the phone talking to his coach saying, or his trainer saying, what do I have to do to get to Murray, to get to Zverev? And we saw last night, he wins the first 2 sets against Manarino on primetime, loses the 3rd set, and he called a medical. He went to use the bathroom again. every time he loses a set, he goes and takes a break. And this is just ridiculous to me, because why? You don't need, every time you lose a set, it's a constant. It's never when he wins a set. It's always when something goes bad for the guy, he needs to go take a break. And for Murray, he talked about after the match, after playing very little tennis, when he just sits there, he gets very cold and it's not good for his muscles. And he said it tensed him up. He didn't feel good about it. His body didn't feel good. And it ultimately affected him a lot down the stretch. And, he didn't make an excuse for losing the match. He just said, this is just the reality of my situation now. After all my surgeries, after what I've been through in this sport, this is the breaks. This is how my body reacts to things like this. And Tsitsipas is a great player, no doubt about it. But I do think he's getting a reputation for being a cheater. And I would correlate Tsitsipas to a Bryson DeChambeau right now, where Bryson, I don't think, wants to be a villain in golf. But we saw him play with Cantlay the other day, where Cantlay started walking before he did a stroke, and he goes, "Patrick, stop walking." And he's always, he's checking out the yardage, and he's yelling, berating his caddy. And Tsitsipas says he's just taking a break, and it's shady stuff. And fair or unfair, maybe he is using the bathroom, but he's getting the same label from the tour. And I'm sure this is great for Novak Djokovic, because nobody really likes Djokovic on tour, but including the fans who really rooted against him on Tuesday night. But this is Tsitsipas putting himself in a position where he can be. People can say, "Well, what's he doing? What is he doing on those bathroom breaks?" And maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just fodder. But that's all it takes in life, something to come up and you say, "Well, what's this all about? What's going down here?" And that's what I'm saying here, where I look and say, Tsitsipas, stop doing this. You're a great player. Come back and win the match. You drop a set, you don't need to take a break. Take the guy on like a man and beat him. Don't take a bathroom break, then duck it and say you got this going on. No. And I don't know, but I don't like this look from Tsitsipas. And quite frankly, if I'm an opponent, if I'm the ATP, if I'm the US Open, I'm looking into this, because I'm getting sick of it as a viewer, because there's a long break where I'm watching him and they're gone for 10 minutes, and ESPN basically has to stall with like, well, Tsitsipas, no pun intended, while Tsitsipas is in the bathroom, and you're like, well, what do we do here? Chris Fowler and Chris Evert just have to run off. Well, this is what happened to the thirds, go through the match again until finally he comes back out. But I do think this is a story, and I think it'll continue if he continues to try to pull off this act as this tournament goes on and into his future of his career. Now, Canadians in majors this year, it's been a positive, I would say mostly positive, but there's definitely been some letdowns. And one of the big letdowns this season has been the play of Bianca Andreescu. And really, it's been a negative couple of years. Since winning the 2019 US Open, she's won very little matches. She missed an entire season. She's been injured. She made the final in Miami. But other than that, it's been a really disastrous season for her. And I look at this tournament as a big opportunity. She didn't play in the 2020 US Open. So in her mind, she's still the reigning defending champion. And Tuesday night, she played on primetime. And she came out, won the first set, lost the second set, was down a break in the third, but she found a way to fight and win the match. It was close to 3 hours long, so it was a lengthy one. But you can take this two ways. One, she won a longer match. Close to 3 hours, it shows that she does have some durability. Her cardio is pretty good. But at the same time, she's playing, a wild card player, and it takes her almost 3 hours to beat her. That, to me, worries me again. And Serena Williams, yes, the last couple of years haven't been that great to her, but she's also 40 years old. She's had a tough time winning. But we look so far. You look at Ash Barty. You look at Naomi Osaka. These women are beating, Djokovic, okay, he had one slip up, but he's winning every other one. They're beating players routinely. It's not 3-4 hours. It's not a huge battle. And the main thing for Bianca too is just her cardio looked good in the first match, But if you're playing a bunch of 3-set matches, how are you going to feel come the quarterfinal? If you get there, you're going to run out of gas, while Ash Barty, Kvitova, Osaka are playing and beating opponents in a routine fashion. So for Andreescu, it's a positive sign for her. And tonight, it's her next challenge. She's playing on primetime again, where she'll play American Lauren Davis tonight on Louis Armstrong Stadium, one half of the primetime tonight. And I think it'll be a different atmosphere because she's playing an American. She's going to be out there, and she's clearly going to be, she's not going to be the fan favorite. In the U.S. is going to be rooting for Lauren. Bianca will be out there with, her parents and Coco the dog rooting for her. That's about it. And I'm interested to see how she handles that, because normally she fuels off the crowd, and they've really, you can tell that she loves having a crowd in her favor. Well, they're not going to be in her favor tonight. They're likely going to be anything but pro Bianca. And this tournament means I think it's so important for her career and just her trajectory. She doesn't have to win this tournament. Perfect world, in Canadians, I think in tennis, we do so much of, well, they made the quarterfinal or they made the round of 16. It's a really good story. Bianca, we shouldn't do that anymore. It should be, did she get to a final? Did she win the tournament? That should have been the expectation after winning the US Open in 2019. But after 2 years of just ineptitude, it's now just when she wins a first round match, it's the headline story on SportsCenter. Well, that's not a headline story. She's ranked 6th in this tournament. That it shouldn't be, Bianca won a match. If she can go on a deep run in this tournament, and I'll give her the benefit, if she can get to a quarterfinal, I'll say it right now, that will be a positive tournament for her. Because of the last 2 years, because of the lack of play, and just her lack of fitness, quite frankly, and her injury history and changing coaches and her doing dog commercials and trying to be Eugenie Bouchard 2.0, show that you want to play tennis, that you're invested in this, and go on a deep run. And it's not Eugenie Bouchard where she made the final at Wimbledon, and since then she's been a ghost. The thing she's known most for since then is that she took the guy who won a Super Bowl bet on a date, and she was on Kess House, Ryan Kessler's little thing on Sportsnet. Other than that, what has she done? Maybe she was in GQ or something, or did some modeling. When it comes to her professional career, which is her sport, she's done nothing noteworthy, nothing to brag about. For Bianca, you're on primetime again tonight. It's your second straight primetime match. Get to a quarterfinal of this tournament. I think it puts you back into that mold where people are like, hey, Bianca's here. She can compete with the Ash Barty. She can compete with Naomi, with Simona Halep, with Petra Kvitova, and it just puts you back in that frame of mind. Well, maybe she can do this, and I think that's super important for her down the stretch here and into this tournament. Other Canadians, young Annie Fernandez, who's 18 years old, is into the third round, her first career third round at a major. She's had a mixed bag summer, losing in the first round at Cincinnati and at the Rogers Cup, but she is into the third round after winning, beat Kai Kanepi in the second round, veteran woman of the tour, 7-5, 7-5. And now this sets up a match with Naomi Osaka, who she'll play tomorrow. Now, they haven't announced yet if that'll be primetime. I think it will be. Great opportunity for Layla, where she's playing Naomi, I think the best female tennis player in the world when she wants to play. Obviously, she's gone through her issues with mental health. She's been very public about it. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, they haven't announced if that will be on primetime yet. But that would be great to see that. But she's 18. This is not this, when Bianca won, she was young as well. So maybe she can go on a run here. That would be a great story for the tour, and not only for the tour, but just for Canada in general, to see what she can do against Naomi. Can she put up a fight? So we'll see what happens, but I like seeing that from her. So she'll play Naomi Osaka tomorrow. Vasek Pospisil, who was kind of in the generation with Milos Raonic, he came back from 2 sets down and beat number 20 in the world, Fabio Fagnini of Italy. A big comeback. Vasek always seems to have, he's always smiling, seems to be a good attitude, but he can't break through. And to win one match and then it's over after that's kind of the run. Now today he's on court as we speak. He's playing Ivshaka from Belarus. He's down 2-0. He's serving at 5-6 in the third set. So he's serving for a third set tiebreak. So if he's going to come back and win this match, he'd have to go 2 sets down again. I doubt that'll happen, but who knows? But, it would likely spell the end of Vasek Pospisil. But also tonight, I mentioned that we'll see Bianca Andreescu on primetime. Denis Shapovalov will also be on prime. He'll be second on Armstrong following Bianca, where he'll play Rafa Karabelas-Bina in the second round here. And Denis has had a poor summer, had a great Wimbledon, made the semifinal, losing to Djokovic, but hadn't won a match since. Lost in the first round at the Rogers Cup, didn't play the Olympics, lost in the first round in Cincinnati, won his first round match in straight sets, playing the Spaniard tonight, heavy favorite. And honestly, he's in a good position in his draw. Djokovic is there, but you look around. Yes, Sasha Zverev's a tough opponent, no doubt about it. But other than those two, in a quarter, in a fourth round scenario, I think he should be favored against anybody. Berrettini's a tough opponent, but he beat Berrettini at Wimbledon. He beat Berrettini at the French. So he's done that before. Berrettini, who made the final at Wimbledon, is at a set apiece right now. He's up a break in the third set. So he's looking to kind of bounce back, get back to the top of the heap here, play the Djokovic's of the world. And then there's Felix Auger-Aliassime, who has won both his matches in straight sets, looks very good, quite dominant performances. He'll play tomorrow against Roberto Bautista Agut, the veteran Spaniard. And I think that match has a good chance of being on primetime tomorrow night. Rublev and TFO might also play on primetime. I'm just thinking of the American. But Felix is a guy that he brings a lot of flair. He's fun to watch on the court. We saw him interact with PK Subban after his first round win. On his day off, they hung out together, and they're actually good friends. So to me, on hard court, I like Felix for Canada better than Bianca, better than Denis of actually winning this tournament. Now you could say, well, Bianca has the better odds because she doesn't have to play a Djokovic. Yeah, but Felix is not in Djokovic's half of the draw. So he wouldn't have to beat him to get to the final, where Denis would. Looking at his half, Rublev, there's Medvedev, but I think I'm not saying Felix is going to win the U.S. Open, but I think he has the best chance of any Canadian in the draw. I don't think Bianca has the stamina, or just I don't have the faith in her to do it at this point of her career, and what she's gone through the last couple of years. I need to see her build to that. Felix struggled at the Olympics, but played well at Wimbledon, like Denis. But I like his draw. I think he's playing really confidently. Now tomorrow his tournament could easily be done because Bautista Agut is a very good player. He's no slouch. He's been to a semifinal of a major. But I think that'll be a match that could go the distance, 4 to 5 sets, and it'll a big opportunity for Felix just to show, okay, I can do this. I'm at the top of my game right now. I can beat anybody in the world, and looking forward to watching that. And then, as I just talk about it, Vasek Pospisil has just entered a third set tiebreak as he held serve, so he'll be looking to win the tiebreak and head into a 4th set, or his tournament will be over before we even know it. But we've seen good tournaments from Canadians so far. Last night, Coco Gauff, the 17-year-old American, was beaten by Sloane Stephens, the 2017 U.S. Open champion. Sloane looks good. She was one of her best matches I've seen her play in a long time last night. Sloane will play, just looking it up here, who she'll play in the next round. Not updated yet, unfortunately, but she'll play tomorrow as well. No, it should be here. No. Okay. Well, thank you, usopen.com, but I don't know why that's not there. But Sloane Stephens advanced. She'll play in the third round tomorrow, I believe. So Sloane looks good. She'll play in the third round tomorrow. And she's another woman, kind of like Bianca, winning in 2017. Since then, it's been a downhill slide where she's at one point was dropped out of the top 70 in the world. She's trying to kind of regain some momentum, get back to where where she was before, and be one of the better women's tennis players in the world. Today also is the start of the Tour Championship, and we talked last weekend about the great playoff that we saw between Patrick Cantlay and Bryson DeChambeau, and I've also talked about my dislike for the Tour Championship format, where Patrick Cantlay started this tournament at 10 under, 3 strokes up on Bryson, who entered this tournament in second place. In third place, 7 under. We saw Tony Finau start at 8 under. But oddly enough, today it's been an interesting day. Patrick Cantlay is through 9 holes. He's actually only shot 1 under, so not having a great day. Tony Finau entered, like I said, he was -8, 2 strokes back. He's having a terrible day. Through 9 holes, he's 3 over. So he's at -5, T7 at this point. We got second place is actually Victor Hoblin, who started at 3 under. He's now shoots 5 under through 14. He's at 8 under par, so 3 strokes back up Patrick Cantlay. Cameron Smith shoots 3 under. He's 8 under. Jordan Spieth and John Rahm are at 7 under. DeChambeau is 6 under. He's shooting 1 over so far today. So a lot of guys sort of in the mix, but again, if Cantlay has a strong back 9, this tournament really could be over by Saturday. And that's my big worry with the format, where guys have to make up so many strokes. And Hovland's had a great day so far, 5 under. He's got 4 holes left. It'd be nice to see him birdie a couple, put some pressure on Cantlay, and have an interesting Friday, / Saturday, Sunday through the last big golf tournament of the weekend, where yes, we'll have the Ryder Cup, but that's not the biggest thing to me. But, to me, I just want to see competitive golf. I want to see guys push Cantlay this weekend. Cantlay obviously comes in the favorite. But if DeChambeau drops out, which, he 1 over right now through 10, not John Rahm, 1 under through 10. He's not having a great day. But could Hovland, start at 3 under par for, being 7 strokes back and come back and win this event? I just find this very hard to believe. And, at a normal tournament, Bailey Horschel and Victor Hovland would be leading this tournament because they're shooting 5 under par. You see everybody else, like Cantlay's 1 under, Cam Smith, Spieth the 3 under par. So is Kevin Na and Jason Kokrak. Finau would be on the verge of missing the cut at 3 over. There's no cut line at this tournament. But we see Hideki Matsuyama today shoots 7 over par. Daniel Berger shot 2 over. Patrick Reed 2 over. Stuart Sink 3 over. So a lot of guys not having great days. But this is the format. I can't change it. Unfortunately, I wish I could. But we'll see what happens this weekend. I'll keep you guys updated as we go. I'll be doing a podcast Saturday morning, doing the football one tomorrow bowl update. The Tour Championship. We'll talk about US Open on Saturday as well. So we'll get into that extensively. Also preview some college football as well. But yeah, I love golf. I'll watch it regardless. This weekend's gonna be a great weekend for sports, where we're gonna have golf, tennis, college football, a great UFC card this weekend with Darren Till fighting Derek Brunson. So a lot of great sports this weekend, including the Dodgers Giants series, which I referenced off the top of the pod. So I can't complain on a long weekend. Some of the sports we're gonna be able to watch this weekend. I just hope that this golf tournament remains competitive through the next couple of days. So it's not just a foregone conclusion when I tune in Saturday afternoon, seeing Patrick Cantlay leading the tournament by 4 or 5 strokes. I'm just like, well, what am I really watching this for? So we'll see what happens there, but that's kind of what I'm hoping doesn't happen over the course of the next 48 hours. The NHL is 3 weeks away from training camps opening. And obviously there's still the Jesperi Kotkaniemi. What's Montreal going to do? We saw Carolina offer sheet Kotkaniemi signing a 1 year, $6.1 million deal. Kotkaniemi signed the deal, so Montreal has 7 days to match the offer sheet. If they don't, he'll be heading to Carolina. Montreal will be in a tough spot because either way they sign him to a contract that he's making more money he deserves, but also if they let him go, their center ice depth is weak. It was weak before losing Danault. So you're looking at Nick Suzuki, Dan Evans, Ryan Poehling, and then who the hell else knows that you're going to put at center. And it's really thin for Montreal. So they're not in a good position, either way. But so we'll see what happens with that over the weekend as well. But over the last 48 hours, we've seen a plethora of signings. And I'll start with the New York Islanders, who I've heard for a long time that, just from people and people in the media, that the Islanders had contracts on ice and they were waiting to announce signings with guys, but they were going to wait until later in the offseason. So teams didn't know their salary cap situation. This is just Lou Lamoriello at his finest, where he wanted to keep everything in-house, sort of like Bill Belichick, wanted to keep people under wraps, a team just coming off back-to-back conference final appearances. And, we see a plethora of signings all announced at once, where the Islanders re-signed deadline acquisition Kyle Palmeri, the 30-year-old winger, to a 4-year deal at $5 million per. So that's $20 million over 4 years. He had his worst season as a pro last year, did have a great postseason for the Islanders, but he is a Lou Lamoriello guy. And I think it was hard to be productive in New Jersey. I think it was growing stale for him. He played 11 years in New Jersey, but the Islanders do have better talent around them. I think you can see Palmeri playing with an Anthony Beauvillier. They could be very good. And, that brings me into Anthony Beauvillier, who signed a 3-year deal at $4.1 million per. Pavilion is a guy, I thought he had a great first 2 rounds of the playoffs. Conference finals, he kind of settled down. He didn't jump off my screen as much. You didn't notice him on the ice as much. That could have just been energy and lack of experience. But I think this guy has more to bring. And New York will stunt your growth as an offensive player. I think Matt Barzal is a 100-point guy. But in New York, he might be 60 to 65 because that's just the way their system goes. But Beauvillier, I think he could be another 50 to 60-point guy in this system because he's got a ton of talent. He's got a good shot, but he's not afraid to mix it up. He's got some bite. He's not afraid to get involved physically. I like his game personally. I loved him in the playoffs, and I think he just brings a lot to the table. Obviously, Jordan Eberle has departed, so they're going to be looking for a guy to step up. And I think a guy like Beauvillier can drive a line with a Palmeri. And they can be an effective twosome on a line if that's where they decide to go, if that's where Barry Trotz decides to go with his lines in Long Island. They also re-signed Casey Zizekas, who's 1/3 of the identity line in New York, to a 6-year deal at $2.5 million per. This was a longer-term deal. Zizekas is 30 years old. I think it's the long-term deal for a guy who's really a 4th-line center. I do think Zizekas brings a lot to the table. He's one of the better penalty killers in the NHL. He's one of the better hitters in the NHL. He plays on a line that you look at it and you're like, this line should be in the 1980s, but yet it's playing in its current form. And they're so effective at it with Casey Zizekas, Matt Martin, and Cal Clutterbuck. But Zizekas, I wouldn't have gave him 6 years, but I do 2.5 is a very fair term. He's not just a 4th-line guy that's going to get you 11 points. He brings more to the table. Like he brings a lot of leadership there. He's a guy that he's Lou Lamoriello to a T. He's all about the team. He'll do whatever it takes. He'll block a shot. He'll serve a penalty. He'll fight. He's just a jack of all trades. And he's a guy that New York has had for a while, and they weren't ready to lose him. And finally, their last signing of the day was Ilya Sorokin, Sorokin, I believe New York sees as their goaltender of the future. They still have Semyon Varlamov, but Varlamov and Sorokin both made starts last year in the postseason. I do think Varlamov's a better goalie right now than Sorokin, but Sorokin is a guy who was drafted, played a number of years in Russia, then came over. He did go through the American League, unlike a lot of Russians who pout and head back over before they can get to the NHL. Sorokin went through the growing pains in Bridgeport, and he's come out the other side. Last year, him and Varlamov really split starts. And I think they head into this season where they go, one of these two will be our starting goaltender. And, it'll be a competition. I do think they'll split a lot of starts. When it comes to the playoffs, you'll look at the regular season and say, who was the best goalie for us? And that's what we'll go with. I don't think Varlamov's our guaranteed starter come game 1 of the playoffs. I think Sorokin has just as good a chance to have the net, and he'll just be on his play next year. But you get 3 times $4 million. That's a very fair contract for a goalie, especially at this point of his career. It's similar to Peter Mrazek's in Toronto. And I think they're both similar, where Mrazek, you could say, maybe could be a starter. I think Sorokin's still in that Mrazek state where he's a tandem goaltender. He hasn't emerged as a number one yet. I think he does have more to bring. But, Palmeri, you could say $5 million is a little rich. He only had 21 points in 50 games. But again, he's playing in New Jersey. I think he was done with it. New Jersey had a terrible season last year. I don't know if you'll get $5 million worth of value, but if you have a good team, you get to the playoffs, and he adds the value that he brought to the Islanders in the postseason last year, then you could live with that contract, and it doesn't seem as bad. That's like anything. If a player is junk in the regular season, but you see the value in the playoffs, key example for me, Devontae Smith-Pelly had a bad contract in Washington. It didn't look good, but he got to the postseason playing with Lars Eller, and you look at it and say those two guys stepped up big. Washington doesn't win a Stanley Cup without Devontae Smith-Pelly, without Lars Eller. I could see the same thing with Palmeri. We're like, hey, this guy's making $5 million. That's quite a bit of cake, but he scores 8 to 10 goals in next year's postseason. Maybe the Islanders break through and win a Stanley Cup. That's well worth it. You'll take that every day of the week, and you forget about that $5 million and what he's making. Pavilion, no problem with that contract. That's totally fair. Great contract by Lou. I think the guy's a stud. I'll take him every day of the week. Cizikas, again, wouldn't give him 6 years. And then the Sorokin are very good. So 3 of the 4, I think, are winners. And I don't think Cizikas' contract is bad. I mean, he's just 30 years old. Giving a fourth-line center a 6-year deal, I think that's risky. But Lou Lamoriello knows he's not going to be in the game forever. And it's a contract that's not going to be impossible to move. I think Cizikas has proven, along with Clutterbuck and Martin, that these type of guys can still be so effective in the game today. They can go up against Sidney Crosby and shut him down. They've done it. They've beaten Sidney Crosby head-to-head in a playoff series twice over the last 3 years. That speaks for itself, and just what this type of team can do, and with these type of players playing the way they are. St. Louis re-signed defenseman Colton Parayko to an 8-year deal worth $52 million. It's $6.5 million a year. Parayko is 28. Was really the number 2 defenseman behind Alex Pietrangelo in the 2019 Stanley Cup run. He's big. He's got a big shot. He's very mobile for his size. And to be honest, I think this is a great deal. We've seen guys get 9. Seth Jones gets 9.5. Zach Werenski gets, Seth Jones get 9. Werenski gets 9.5. Dougie Hamilton gets $9 million. We're seeing guys, Darnell Nurse gets a huge contract. Guys are getting paid out the wazoo. But you'll look here and say, Colton Parayko, a guy who's won a Stanley Cup. All those guys I just listed have not won a Stanley Cup, haven't really got close. He's a leader of a team. Check. I think, to me, he's the number 1 defenseman on St. Louis, and there's no problem with him being the number 1 defenseman. Pietrangelo has departed, but Parayko is still very good. I love the way he plays, and I think he's just a stud. And to get a number 1 defenseman locked up at $6.5 million a year is a win. And this contract, we've seen a lot of big contracts, and then him to get 6.5 and be okay with it, I think is really telling to me. He gets the term, no doubt, with 8 years, but we're seeing guys get 8-year deals at $9 million, where I do think Seth Jones is better than Colton Parayko, but I don't know if Zach Werenski is better than Colton Parayko at this point. I think they're both very good, but I think Colton Parayko is on the Canadian Olympic team, on their defense. And that says a lot. Will Dougie Hamilton be on the team? I don't know. I think Parayko, just his style, the way he plays, to me, Parayko's on the Olympic. I love him. And to get a number 1 defenseman locked up at $6.5 million, it frees up a lot of money to spread elsewhere. That's a good thing. And I think it's just a good sign of an organization getting a good deal done with a good player. They couldn't get Pietrangelo re-signed, but they get Parayko done Torrey Krug is there. They still have Ryan O'Reilly. Braden Shen still brings something to the table. Now, St. Louis might be going through harder times as we go along here. I think the next couple of years are going to be huge for this franchise, just to see what they have and what's left of this core and what of the Stanley Cup winning roster. But Parayko is for the now and for the future. He's only 28. And to me, a defenseman comes to mind when I see this contract, and that's Morgan Reilly. Morgan Reilly will be a free agent after this season. He's making $5 million currently. He signed a 5 times 5, very good deal at the time. That's a very good contract. But Colton Parayko won a Stanley Cup. Colton Parayko, I believe, will be on the Olympic team. I don't think Morgan Reilly should be on the. If Morgan Reilly makes the Olympic team over Colton Parayko, if our NHL players go, then we're fucking crazy. But I look at this and say, Parayko gets 8 times 6.5. If I'm a team and Parayko got that, I'm not signing. Well, first of all, I'm not signing Morgan Reilly for 8 years, but $6.5 million. That's my baseline. That's my flat. I'm not going above that because I'm just saying Colton Parayko is better than Morgan Reilly. And I've heard, $7-8 million in the past. Well, this is a new barrier. Or if I'm a team, I say, okay, we have a guy who won a Stanley Cup, who's actually won a playoff round, who's better than you, is making 6.5. Why should we give you a penny more? And to me, this contract, and maybe I'm jumping the horse, I'm just jumping the gun here, but it was already a big year for Morgan Reilly. This amplifies it more because if he has another porous year, and he wasn't terrible last year, but since his great year where he was a Norris candidate, he's been an adequate defenseman. No better, no worse, just adequate. While during that time, Colton Parayko, Seth Jones, these guys, Adam Fox, these guys have won major trophies, have won Stanley Cups. They're good players. Cale Makar. And you could say Colton Parayko is a second-tier defenseman. Okay, if he's a second-tier defenseman, well, Morgan Reilly's third tier. And he's making $5 million on his next contract. How much more is he going to make? And every time I see a contract like this, I say, not much more than he's making right now. If you're smart, just because a player is unrestricted doesn't mean you should overpay him. Putting a player in a position to theoretically succeed is not doing the right thing. You need to put it in a player in a position to succeed, not theoretically succeed. Putting a number 2 or number 3 in the number 1 defenseman slot is just bad management. And if a team gets desperate enough to sign Morgan Reilly to a big contract, no problem with Morgan Reilly signing it. I never argue about a player getting their money. You can bitch about Mitch Marner and how he played, or Connor McDavid and the way he played in the playoffs last year, or Nathan McKinnon in the Vegas series. But you can do that after the fact. But it's hypocritical for anyone to complain about somebody making money, because there's no person in the world that would, if you're Morgan Reilly, if you get offered 8 times 8, there's no human being is turning that down unless you're Bezos or somebody that's really, just an egomaniac rich guy. But if for a regular person working a 9 to 5, guess what? We're taking $8 million a year for offered it. And we're not even thinking twice about it. But if I'm a GM, and I'll play a GM here on this podcast, if I see a Colton Parayko make 6.5, Morgan Reilly isn't making 7. And that's how I rationalize it. So I think it's a big year because it's a contract year, but also there's contracts that are starting to pop up that would worry me if I'm Morgan Reilly, because I'm like, Colton made that. What the hell am I going to get in the open market? That's just something to ponder as we look ahead here. Great show today. I'll be back tomorrow with Matt Wright, as I mentioned throughout the pod. We'll talk about all things NFL. Tonight, we got the U.S. Open Tour Championship. We also got college football. Ohio State, CJ Stroud, their new quarterback after Justin Fields is headed to the NFL. We'll see what he can do tonight against Minnesota. College football is back. We got North Carolina with one of the Heisman favorites, Sam Howell, playing tomorrow. Great games this weekend, which I'll touch on Saturday morning when I do a pod. But tomorrow's Friday, so let's get through tonight, get through this crappy weather here as it rains behind me. But everybody, thanks for tuning in. Tune in tomorrow. Should be a fun pod. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk soon.